My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old and I'm a senior vice president at a tech consulting firm. I make $215,000 a year plus bonuses. I worked my way up from an entry-level analyst, bought my first car, paid off my student loans, and earned every promotion through late-night strategy and refusing to be underestimated when I met my husband, Derek, 5 years ago at a work conference. He seemed proud of me. He'd brag to his friends about my job, my salary, my ambition. He said he loved that I was driven, independent, strong. Then I met his mother, Linda, at our engagement dinner. She looked at my ring, smiled tightly, and said, "Well, I suppose modern women need careers until they have children." The table went quiet. Derek laughed it off, saying, "Mom, she's kidding." But Linda wasn't kidding. She spent the rest of the night asking when I planned to start a family, if I knew how to cook, if I understood that a man needs a wife who's present, not distracted by work. I should have seen the red flags. Then I should have walked out, but I loved Derek and I thought love would be enough. It wasn't. The problem started small. After the wedding, Linda began dropping by our house unannounced. She'd criticize how I kept the kitchen, comment that I was never home, ask Derek if he was eating properly, since I was always at the office if I pushed back. She'd cry and say she just wanted her son to be happy, and Derek would look at me like I was the villain for not bending over backward to accommodate her. Then it escalated. She started calling Derek during my work hours, filling his head with ideas that my job was taking me away from him, that I cared more about my career than our marriage, that successful women made bad wives. Derek started repeating her words almost word for word. "Sarah, do you really need to work this much? Couldn't you find something less demanding, maybe stay home a few days a week?" I thought he was joking. I said, "Derek, I'm up for partner next year. This is my career, not a phase." He looked uncomfortable, then said, "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we need to rethink our priorities." "Our priorities?" I repeated. "Or your mother's priorities?" He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. It got worse during the holidays. Linda hosted Thanksgiving and spent the entire meal talking about Derek's cousin who quit her job to raise her 3 kids. Such a devoted mother. She kept saying, giving me pointed looks. Derek said nothing. I spent Christmas listening to Linda tell relatives that I was too busy with work to give her grandchildren, and when I finally confronted Derek in private, he sighed and said, "She means well, can't you just try to get along with her?" "I am trying." I said, "She's the one attacking me every chance she gets." He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. "Maybe if you made more time for family stuff, she wouldn't feel so left out." I stared at him, realizing that somewhere along the way he'd stopped being my partner and started being his mother's son. Then, one night, Linda called Derek while we were having dinner. I heard him saying, "I know, Mom, I know she's barely here anymore. I'll talk to her." When he hung up, I asked what that was about, and he said, "We need to have a serious conversation. My mother thinks," and I stopped him right there. "I don't care what your mother thinks," I said. "This is our marriage, not hers." He slammed his hand on the table, startling me. "She's my mother, Sarah. She wants what's best for me, and honestly, I'm starting to agree with her. Your job is ruining us." That's when I knew I wasn't fighting his mother anymore. I was fighting both of them. I started documenting everything. After that, I saved text messages where Linda told Derek I was a bad wife. I recorded a phone call where she said if he really loved his family, he'd make me quit. I kept emails where Derek agreed with her, saying he felt neglected and maybe we needed a more traditional setup. I also started meeting with a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca, and she specialized in high-asset divorces. When I laid everything out, she raised an eyebrow. "Your husband makes what? $70,000 a year. And you make over 200, right?" I nodded. She leaned back and said, "If you divorce him, he's entitled to half of everything accumulated during the marriage. But Sarah, you've been funding this lifestyle. He's going to walk away with a lot, unless we prove he breached the marriage through coercion or that his mother's interference constitutes undue influence." I thought about it, then said, "What if I can prove they were planning to financially control me?" She leaned forward. "Tell me everything." Here's what I'd found. A week earlier, I'd come home early from a business trip and overheard Derek on the phone with Linda in the garage. I stood outside the door and listened. "Mom, I think she's going to say no about quitting," he said. Linda's voice came through the speaker. "Then you Need to be firm, Derek, that money. She makes its community property. You have just as much right to it as she does if she won't quit. Voluntarily, you need to make her once she's home full. Time you can manage the finances and she won't have a choice. My stomach dropped. He laughed nervously. I don't know if I can just take over her accounts. Linda's voice turned sharp. You're the husband. Act like it. I recorded the rest of the conversation on my phone, and that night I moved money from our joint account into a separate one. I started protecting myself because I realized I wasn't married to a partner. I was married to a man who saw me as an ATM his mother could control. The breaking point came 2 months later. Linda invited us to a family dinner, and when we arrived, she'd invited a life coach who spent an hour talking about work-life balance and how successful women often sacrifice family happiness. It was an ambush. I sat there silent, while this stranger, who Linda clearly paid, told me that my career was damaging my marriage and that real fulfillment came from supporting your spouse. Derek nodded along, agreeing with everything she said. When we got home, I said that was completely out of line, and he exploded. Maybe if you actually listened instead of being so defensive, you'd realize people are trying to help. You help me? I said. They're trying to control me and you're letting them. He stepped closer, his face red. Then maybe you should quit. Maybe that's the only way to save this marriage. I looked at him. This man I'd loved, this man who once celebrated my promotions, and I said, if quitting my job is the only way to save this marriage, then this marriage isn't worth saving. He stared at me, shocked, then said, fine, if that's how you feel. Maybe we should rethink everything I said. Maybe we should. And the next morning I called Rebecca and said, file the papers. The divorce filing blindsided him. I'd moved out while he was at work, taking only my personal things and leaving a copy of the petition on the kitchen counter. When he called, screaming, I stayed calm. Derek, I'm done being bullied by you and your mother. This marriage is over. He threatened to fight me, said he deserved half of everything I'd worked for, and that's when Rebecca stepped in. She filed a motion to freeze our joint assets and submitted evidence of Linda's interference and Derek's plans to financially control me. The judge read the transcripts of the phone call I'd recorded and ruled that Derek had acted in bad faith. The court classified my income as separate property since Derek had explicitly planned to take control of it without my consent, and because most of our assets had been purchased with my earnings. The judge awarded me the house, the car, and my retirement accounts. Derek got his truck, his personal savings, and half of the equity we'd built, which amounted to about $30,000. He was furious. Linda showed up at my lawyer's office, screaming that I'd ruined her son's life, that I was a selfish career obsessed woman who destroyed families. Rebecca had security escort her out and filed a restraining order. The fallout was brutal. Derek had to move back in with Linda because he couldn't afford rent on his salary. His friends started asking questions, and when the truth came out that he'd tried to control my finances and force me to quit, people stopped taking his side. Linda tried to spin the story, saying I abandoned her son, but my former mother-in-law's friends had seen her behavior for years and quietly reached out to tell me they weren't surprised. Meanwhile, I got the promotion I'd been working toward. I became partner at my firm. My salary jumped to $280,000, and I bought a beautiful condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and zero memories of Derek or his mother. I started dating again, casually, and for the first time in years, I felt light. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't defending my existence. I was just living, and it was incredible. Derek tried to reach out a few months after the divorce was finalized. He sent an email saying he missed me, that he realized he'd made mistakes, that his mother had pushed too hard. I didn't respond. Then he showed up at my office building one evening, waiting by my car. Sarah, please. He said, can we just talk? I looked at him and saw a man who'd chosen his mother over his wife, who'd tried to shrink me to make himself feel bigger. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You made your choice. He looked desperate. I was wrong. Okay, I should have defended you. I should have told my mother to back off. I know that now. I unlocked my car. You didn't just fail to defend me, Derek. You actively tried to control me. You and your mother plotted to take away my career, my independence, my money. That's not a mistake. That's betrayal. He reached for my arm, and I stepped back. Don't touch me, I said. I'm not your wife anymore. I'm not your problem, and I'm certainly not your second chance. He stood there, looking lost, and I realized he wasn't upset about losing me, he was upset about losing the lifestyle. I provided the house, the vacations, the stability. I drove away and didn't look back. Linda sent me a letter. A few weeks later, it was long, rambling, full of accusations that I'd destroyed her son, that I was cold, selfish, that I'd never understood what family meant. I read it once, then shredded it, because nothing she said mattered anymore. She'd spent years trying to make me small, trying to convince me that my worth was tied to how well I served her son. And when I refused to shrink, she painted me as the villain. But here's the truth, I'm not the villain. I'm the woman who refused to quit. I'm the woman who built a career while being torn down at home. I'm the woman who recognized that love without respect is just control dressed up in wedding vows. And when I walked away, I didn't just leave a bad marriage. I left the version of myself who thought she had to earn the right to exist fully. Today, I'm thriving. My career is stronger than ever. I've traveled to 4 countries. This year, I've mentored young women in my field, and I've built a life that's entirely mine. Derek is still living with Linda, working the same job, making the same excuses. And every time someone asks me if I regret the divorce, I smile and say, not for a second, because the truth is his mother demanded I quit my $200,000 job, and I did quit. I quit being his wife. I quit tolerating disrespect. I quit pretending that shrinking myself would save a marriage that was already broken. And when I divorced him and took half of everything, it wasn't revenge, it was justice. It was me reclaiming every dollar, every hour, every piece of myself that I'd poured into a partnership that never valued me. So tell me, if someone's mother demanded you give up everything you worked for, would you bend, or would you hire the best lawyer in town and walk away with your head high and your bank account intact? Because I chose myself, and I do it again every single time.